All right, we're recording. Hello, Karen. Hopefully else will join us. But this is the owner's class for Icon 2, and this is the first part 1. And with each part, it's a separate class. But within each class, there are a few topics. Today's topics are machine overview, artificial intelligence, speech recognition, and then we're going to work on the projection rather. And there's 3 sections in projection: calibration, setting up and sewing, and then the grid, setting up the grid. So those are the basically four topics that we're going to be covering today. So all of you probably have had your Icon for at least a week. And hopefully you know how to sew or thread it. Hang on, I gotta stop sharing already. It starts. Okay, I don't see anybody else coming in, but anyhow, so I'm gonna start sharing the screen. And oh. Let's see. I'm going to pause the recording for a minute. Okay, we're back. And so I'm going to go over the machine overview first. And there are several changes with this Icon 2 compared to your creative Icon. So the first feature is the multi-touch screen. To get to the multi-touch screen, you're going to go to the home or the hub, and that's the main screen. And as you can see, there's basically 3 sections. The one is the sewing section, which is dedicated to all things sewing. Embroidery section is dedicated to all embroidery things. And then there's My SewNet, which is basically the blog. This little feature down here, continue from save state, we're going to hang on to that until we get to the embroidery side. The next step that I'd like to show you, we'll go into sewing. And we'll go across basically the top. This is your Wi-Fi. This is where you you sign in rather to your My SewNet account. This is the timer, and it's nice to have a timer. Sometimes I'll set it for let me know when to start dinner, something like that. Or sometimes I've timed how long an embroidery design is. Then there's the clock, and I like this new feature. I really wanted a clock, and I guess they listened to us and added that. Then that's the home screen or the hub. This takes you into your My SewNet blog directly, so you can open and close it right from there as well. This you can toggle back and forth between embroidery. And I'm just going to cancel that. But you can toggle back and forth between embroidery to get to that. Now back to the sewing, we just tap the load stitch again and it closes the embroidery screen. All right, now this, let me tap that. That is your project center. And there aren't any projects loaded at this point, because we're going to go to the help center and then select a project, and you'll see what I'm talking about. This is the question mark for help anywhere on the screen. I call it Google. Anytime you're on a screen, if you tap that and then you tap another icon, it will pop up with whatever that icon is. And in this case, it's load stitch. And then I hope you can see that there's a read about loading a stitch that takes you directly into the built-in manual. And I'm going to tap OK. Now, when you go into the Help Center, there's a lot, that's what this icon is right here. There's a lot of different things that you see right away. You can start with your techniques and tutorials. That's the biggest bold top part of your screen. There's the quick start guide, which will give you some help in loading or winding a bobbin or threading the machine, those types of things. This is the user guide, and that's basically the built-in manual. There are sewing instructions, and when you go into sewing instructions, there are actually a few projects in here. These cushions or pillows, and then the fashion accessories, these were all on our icon, but most people didn't even know that. They added bags, and so this leather tote is a new project. I haven't made it yet. I think it'd be fun someday to tackle it, but right now I'm super busy and doing different things. So I'm just going to close that help for a minute. Whoops, sorry, I meant go back. There we go. And this is a new, well, not new feature. This was on the icon, but it's a nice feature to have, and it's the stabilizer guide, which gives you explanations of the different types of stabilizers. And usually when I sell an embroidery machine, we recommend a water soluble, a tearaway, and a cutaway. And these are just the different types of stabilizers in each one. And then there's just the one batting, which is the fusible fleece. Okay, so we'll go back to the Help Center. This is the accessory guide. And now there are several quilt accessories. Right here, it shows you echo quilting. I am going to do free motion ruler quilting in part 3 of the lessons. And then this also shows you the quilt binder and how to use it and attaching the 6D foot. There are accessories also with embroidery, and those are part of a lot of the lessons that I teach. And we will be doing in June the cutwork needles right here, and that's where there is an explanation of it. Also, this is the new creative ribbon embellishment attachment. I'm sorry, this is the older version, if you will. This just does the ribbon. This one down here is the creative embellishment attachment, which does ribbon and beads and yarn. And I do have one that's done. I'll just go grab it. I did this the other day, and I'll just put it on my screen so that you can see it. Can you see that, Karen?
Yes.
Okay. So right here, you can see these are the beads, and this butterfly is built into your machine. I added yarn, and the yarn I just picked up at the Dollar Tree. Then the ribbon I bought some on Amazon, but this took almost all afternoon. It was really enjoyable switching out, and for me, a new learning experience and how to use that attachment. These are some of the designs also. This large design is part of the new embroidery, and so is this butterfly right here. That butterfly is part of the new embroidery as well. So I thought I'd share that today so you could get a chance to look at that, to see how it actually works. All righty, now go back. And the last one is the machine accessories. And this one is for those of you that have the multi-function foot control, and it explains how to set it up, and in just a basic instructions, 5 pages of how to set it up and use it. I do not have that. Karen, do you have the multifunction foot control?
No, I don't. I just saw it the last time I was at my dealer. They showed it to me, but I haven't gotten it.
Yeah, we sold quite a few. They were given as part of their package when they picked up their machine. Some people like it and some people don't. So it's just a matter of getting used to it. I usually recommend that they start one function at a time, and cutting is usually the first function I recommend. Okay, back to the help center. This is brand new. This is the needle guide. This was added with this machine, and basically it goes over the different needles and recommends different needles for utility stitching, embroidery needles, heirloom needles, and specialty effect or specialty fabric needles, including the leather needle, a ballpoint, a microtext. Whoops, so there we go. All right, back to the help center. And then let's go back to the settings. Okay. Whoops, got to turn that off first. There we go. All righty, now the settings, there's a variety of different features in the settings, and these are basically the same as the icon. You'll notice though that there's the default setting, which is on the left, and then in orange are the temporary settings. So you can change them while you're working, and you can turn off the active stitch technology, for example, or you can turn off the automatic presser foot lift, the thread cutter, and the other day I used the twin needle, but you'll see it's grayed out. And the reason it's grayed out is because I have the single hole stitch plate on. And I did that so that you could see that with the single hole throw plate on, some of the features will be grayed out. And that is another feature that I wanted you to understand. So when I change the foot, I'll go back, or plate rather, then we'll go back and I'll show you that. Also, let's go through the settings real quickly. So then they have the embroidery settings, same thing. And did you know that you can embroider with a twin needle? And that might be one of the projects that I will do in the future because it's kind of fun. A little nerve-wracking, but kind of fun. And then there's the presser foot height embroidery, so you can actually adjust that. This little feature down here, if you want to see the pop-up screen every time you go to embroider, leave that check. If you want to, just because you know you've got it set up correctly, you know everything's ready to go, you can uncheck that and it will not show you those embroidery settings. On the icon machine, you didn't have any options to turn it off. It was on, period. So that's a new feature. Then in machine, this is where you will find all your basics, including your toggle between inches and millimeters, and I'm going to change it to millimeters. I was working with inches when I was designing, and so that's why it was still on. Then down here are your color themes, and there's a white and dark, a light rather, and dark for each of the color themes that the icon tube comes in. And I have it on winter, white, dark, hoping that it'll make it easier for you to see. Also, if you don't check the canvas workspace customization, then you will not be able to set your icons into floating icons. And I'll show you what that means as well. Okay, any questions on that? You can adjust your LED work light here if you choose to. You can name your machine. You'll see mine is Princess. And then setting up your time zone and your time format. Wi-Fi is where you set up the Wi-Fi in your home. You can see I have mine checked, ready to go. This is my sew net, and you can see I have used quite a bit of the space in my sew net. I need to clean up some of those folders so I can have some more room. Then the camera and recognition is, let me turn down my phone. There we go. The presser foot recognition. If you have that checked, then your artificial intelligence will work. If you don't have that checked, then you won't see the machine's recommendations. So I always leave it checked. Here is where you calibrate both the camera and the projector, and we'll go over that towards the end of the lesson. Okay? Any questions so far?
Not yet.
Not yet? All right. Now, let's go into my sew net. So I'm going to go into my sew net, and you must be signed in to be able to access my sew net. And I'm going to slide over here to get my hand out of the way. I keep turning this down, it just doesn't want to work. And the reason, okay, I should put it in a drawer and muffle it. That's what I'll do. There. All right. Now, this is the latest project that they put on the My Sew Net. This is a kid's apron, and when you select this, then you'll see basically the step-by-step instructions right here for the kid's apron. When you tap that blue hyperlink, you can save this in your cloud or on your cloud, and I'll save it. And so now when I open up my project creator, I should be able to find that kid's apron. Okay, and it's also available if you go online into the My Sew Net library. Now, the other thing too is whenever you see any blue hyperlinks like this spiral coaster, that is a freebie, and you should go ahead and download it. It's also free in My Sew Net library. If you take a look and you search for free items, that should pop up. So I always download them because I like, some of them are really very cute, and I've been able to design a few wonderful projects using their free designs. So how far back do we go? We don't go as far back as on the icon, as we're into Easter, Valentine's Day, Christmas. So it stops right about there, I guess. I'm sure there's more if you have just the icon as well. All righty, so there's My Sew Net. Now we'll go back to sewing. And I think I've covered everything basically right up here rather quickly. So if there are any questions, again, Karen, are there any questions?
Not yet, no.
Okay. All right, I'm switching out the throat plate. And as you can see, it is reminding me that I'm taking off the straight stitch plate. There we go. And I tap OK. Now, had I left that on, it would not allow me to create a zigzag stitch. So it would inform me that I couldn't because the safety stitch width is on. Now, let's go back into the settings and see if there's a difference. There better be. All righty. Come on. There we go. Come back. There we go. All right, now when I go down to the stitch limiting options, you can now see that it's no longer grayed out because the stitch width safety is no longer checked because I've taken out the plate. You can also check that if you want. If you're, especially it's important if you're using a twin needle because you don't want to go really too far wide. It won't let you, but you'll also break the twin needle. Okay. Now, what I did is I left you some room on your handouts too, so that if you had any questions or you wanted to make some notes, you could do that too. All right. I'm waiting for it to focus. Is it there? Okay, much better. Now, with the artificial intelligence, that's all right up here in this screen, right there, the active features. And you will see in the recommendation screen, it will tell you that for the first stitch, which is a straight stitch, they recommend using the 0 foot and to engage the dual feed. And you will find that slide, whoops, I knew I was going to do that. There we go. All righty. Right here. Okay. And these are just recommendations. This is stitch information, which is stitch 1, 1, 1. And what that means is when you go to a load stitch, hello there, you'll find that you have 9 categories. And you get to the different categories by swiping this way. Okay. Then when you're in the first category, utility, then you have 4 subcategories. And you open each subcategory by tapping on it. 3 and 4. Now, the next lesson, which is part 2, it's slightly confusing. I should rename them like introduction and part 1, part 2. I think I might rename them. This whole, we're going to go over the whole utility category. And then the next part would be the quilt category, and that I'll be teaching in June. Okay. So that's that stitch feature right there. So I'm going to close that. Now it says that there's no presser foot or presser foot. Oh no, it says there's no presser foot, just the presser foot ankle. So when I load the foot, I snap the 0A in place and engage the dual feed. It now is happy. Okay, because it knows that the 0A is attached to the machine and I've engaged the dual feed and there's the dual feed right down there. Now, one of the activities is to put your zipper foot on. And this is the zipper foot. And most people put it on backwards. This is the correct way to put the zipper foot on. So you read the number 4, but I'm going to intentionally put it on backwards. And when you put it on backwards, then I'll show you what it looks like that. It said originally that it was an incorrect foot. But now it says that it's incorrectly attached foot. So it knows, the machine knows that when you have the zipper foot on or any other foot on for that matter, let's take a look at the zipper foot. Can you see how I have that on backwards, Karen?
Mm-hmm.
So it knows and it's not happy. So it tells you that and puts it in red print. so that you can look at it. You can see it right away. I'll tell you, when this first came out, I was like, I saw the red print. I didn't know what that red print meant. And they're looking at me, everybody at the store is looking at me like I'm an idiot. But it did pop up, so that's the reason why. All right.
But now it wouldn't sew with it that way, right?
No, and I've had customers
Good.
that have tried to do that. And then
Okay.
tell them that their zipper puts on backwards, then they're embarrassed. But no worries, that's why we take lessons, so you can learn. Okie doke. All righty, let's put that in without getting the thread jammed up. Okay, now that's basically all there is to the artificial intelligence. There may be more. They're working on, I'm sure, using different feet. For example, the clear open toe foot, or I have all of my feet right here. Let me see, like last week when we used the 3-hole yarn foot, it didn't recognize that foot. And
Right.
so I'm sure they're working on those, adding them in place. So, okay. And many of the feet do work. I have some feet from my 2140, my 7570, and like this is I'll put it up by the camera. This is a roller foot. And it's plastic and it's rather yellow. And so it still works though. So I'll buy a new one. Now, the ones that do not work are like the Stitch in the Ditch. They have a Stitch in the Ditch foot now for this machine, and it's because of the front feed dogs that we're not on the 7550, we're not on the 2140 or the older machines. So that is the main feature or main difference between those feet. Okay, did you know that? Karen, were you aware of that?
No,
Okay, good. New information then. Glad to
Yeah.
know. Glad to hear that. All right, next up is speech recognition. I gotta take a sip here. I fought with this for a while, and it has now been updated. I think that was part of the latest update, was to make the connection between her and our machine smoother. And what you have to do if you're having trouble, it says to go into the, I don't want to say the word, go into alexa.amazon.com, and that should be on your handout.
Yeah.
And to show you how to get it set up so that it will work. Okay, now we're going to try this. Let's see if I practiced with her before. Let's see if she's going to behave or not. So the first thing you do is you ask, let's say, Alexa,
Sorry, I'm having trouble. Please try it in a little while.
No, I'll say it right. Alexa, ask Creative Icon to show me how to sew an invisible zipper.
Here's something I found on the web. According to nationalsewingcircle.com, pressing the coils of an invisible zipper open slightly before sewing.
Alexa, stop. That's not what I want. I know she wouldn't cooperate. But basically what I have to do is rephrase and ask her a different way. So, Alexa, open Creative Icon 2.
Welcome to my CNET. What would you like to do?
Show me how to sew an invisible zipper.
Okay, here is a tutorial.
Okay,
Do you have another request?
there it is. No.
You have one machine online, Princess.
Yes.
Is there anything else you would like to do?
No, thank you.
Okay, bye.
So I'm not sure if you heard what she said, but she said you have one machine online and her name is Princess. Yes, that's true. I'm tickled with that. That's just, I love the new technology. And so even though I rarely use it, I like that we have it. Let me put it that way. So then basically what you do is you go through it and you can expand them so that you have a larger space if you want. And that was nice that behaved. And you just scroll through them. And then when you get to anything that has this camera, you tap it and it takes you to the video player. And that really is a nice feature. I use that a lot, like in part 1, part 2. Definitely going to have to change this. And this is always, the lessons are always in constant change. So anyhow, I use that when we sew on buttons and buttonholes because it's a good reference. The blind hem is another one that's a good reference. It's nice to be reminded of how to do these different techniques. All righty, so I'm just going to close everything up. Have you set up your Alexa yet, Karen?
No, I have not.
Okay, let me know if you have any trouble
Okay.
when you get ready to set it up, because as I said, there were some changes with the update. You did the update, correct?
Yes.
All right, good. All righty. Okay, now let's continue on. I was looking to see the other ladies may be coming, maybe working, and so they are probably going to watch the recording. If you are one of the other ladies that are working and you're now watching the replay, hello, welcome to the lessons. Next up is the projection, and I do spend most of the time on the projection. There are a few things that I want to go over first before we go into that, and I'm going to explain that right now. So this bar right here, if you just grab that and you pop it open like that, it shows you that you can do other things besides just open up the toolbar. Basically, this is called a smart toolbox. And this won't show, let me pick another stitch that'll make more sense. Okay. And I'll go into beetle art. And I'll go into I don't know what that is. A kitty cat. So if I pop this, long hold. Now, come on. Now it'll drag it. Come on. Now it won't work. Of course.
Is this supposed to be showing up on your screen?
Oh, thanks. Yes. All right, here we go. Thank you for reminding me. So as you can see, I brought up a kitty cat cross stitch design, and when I long hold, the smart toolbox pops up. And so I can mirror it side to side, or if I wanted to try that again and go end to end. This is just a quick reference. It is also all as part of the features along the bottom. So I've already got mirror there, and I can mirror it top to bottom as well. So that's basically this toolbar, and then this toolbar along the bottom. In the basic settings, you can actually turn off and just use the symbols. There will not be any wording below them. You can just, once you get used to knowing what those icons are, you could, turn them off. But I haven't yet. So this we can move around. Now, this one, oops, let me try going on the other side. This one, we used to be able to swipe it, and we could just spin it over to minimize it. Now, the only thing that I've been able to do is just drag it out of the way. Now, why would that make a difference? Whoops, sorry. Because when you go to select a stitch, you'll see the stitch is behind to the left. Now I can drag this, whoops, and I can make it longer and skinnier. But until I say okay and close this, now the stitch is in the middle. So for example, when you're doing eyelets, and let me make this a little larger. And scroll over here. Or buttonholes, eyelets, buttonholes, any of those, and you long hold on it. If you have this recommendation box where, stop. Okay. It's not going to move, of course. There we go. If I have it up where it normally sits, then it covers up the eyelet. So if I know for a fact that I'm going to be using eyelets or buttonholes or individual stitches, then I move this recommendation screen out of the way. Because as you can see right there, it just covered up the eyelet. Until I close this, now the eyelet is shown. Okay?
Okay.
Another part of this screen is if you want to have some floating icons. So, for example, when I do the tapering stitches, a lot of times I like to have floating icons. So let me go into all right, let's see what this looks like. Okay, I'll close that. All right, now I want to access, edit, stitch. You'll see right here, there is a highlighted box with, in the top right-hand corner is an arrow pointing to the right. If you long hold on that, tap it. Must be at a bad angle. Let me scoot over here again. There, it turns orange. And when it turns orange, all of these become individual screens. And you can just drag it and pull it up. You can just drag this and pull it. Isn't that neat?
Yeah.
And then pull it up over here. So now you can literally close this, and now you have more access to your stitch. You'll notice that this is the tapering. We did that last month. Or no,
Right.
it's still this one. And so I can actually taper that, close this, and now I could adjust the length if I wanted to make it longer, I wanted to make it narrower, those kinds of things. All right, when you're in taper, it won't let you change the width apparently. So now I want to go back to all of them back sitting where they belong. So I can pop this and just close these. And then they go back to where they belong. All right. Now this
Okay.
is pretty cool feature, but this is the only screen that I've been able to find. I'm not even sure it does it in embroidery, but we used to do other screens on the icon. So we've requested to have a little bit more floating icons, because what happens is when you're designing something, your screen is all full of different stitches or boxes or shapes or anything like that. And this edit screen or any of the other ones get in the way. So now I'll just close that. Now we have this screen right here. And then there's the edit stitch symbol that I was referencing. But below that is your width. And you'll see that there's a little dot right here. It's like a slider. And if you tap that, behind the width is a position screen, and that's the needle position. Now, if I tap it again, it goes back to the width. Now it's 7.5. I can move that around. There's still room because this is a 9mm stitch machine. But if you have the entire 9mm stitch, it's going to be grayed out. And what I'm referencing is if I tap this and make it as wide as it can go, right? Because it's grayed out. And then I go to move the needle position. See how the needle position's grayed out? Because there's no room to move the stitch. That's as wide as it's going to be. That's as wide as the hole or the opening and the throat plate is. So you have to change whenever you want to adjust the width of any stitch. It has to be under 9.0 for it to show up behind it. All right.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Now there's nothing hiding behind this length stitch, but in some instances, we may be able to find, I know there's something hiding in satin stitches. So if I select a satin stitch, and let me select that, number 2, and close this. Now do you see both of them have a little button there?
Mm-hmm.
That little button is going to be grayed out because this scallop is already at 9mm. So if I tap that, see, it's already grayed out. The only way I can get it to show is if I minimize the width. And then I can also minimize the length and make it a smaller scallop. Now it'll pop open and there's the position again. Okay. And back up again. All right. Now in the length, if I tap the length, what it now shows is the density. And the density, if you make the stitches longer, it kind of spreads them apart. This will make the stitch denser without changing the stitch length in any way. So I can shorten the density. You see how it goes closer together, the visual, it makes it darker.
Mm-hmm.
And now I have the stitch density, let me show you there, of 0.2.
Okay.
So the density is mainly on scallop stitches. It's pretty obvious. Here's another one where it's obvious. These little balls. Have you ever used those little stitches for anything? They're
No,
great.
not yet.
Yeah, they're great for eyeballs.
Oh, yeah.
You know, if you're doing an applique, or I've used them for the dots on a ladybug. And they're basically, wherever you see that opening, you're going to see the background fabric. So if you change the density, you can see how they close up, but they're still the same size.
Oh,
That is a really nice feature. So they're still 11 millimeters long, and they're still 9 millimeters wide. And again, if you tap this, you won't be able to move your needle because it's 9 millimeters wide. That's the widest the stitch is. Okie doke.
Okay.
And then this is your metering with your active stitch. And we talk more about that in the next session. Okay, I'd like to show a couple of these features in this session though. All righty, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go into the calibration of the camera and the projector. Now you have your choice, everyone who's watching this, and Karen, if you want to do any of these activities, this one doesn't have as many activities as the ones that are coming up. You can watch the video and then make sure that, let me make sure this is recording. Yes, it's recording, okay. Then you can go back and do the activities while you watch the replay. So that, and then you can pause it too. So we're going to go to the stitch. Let's do needle art. And we'll do stitch number 4. Okay. All right, we're gonna leave that there. We're going to turn on the projection. Let's pick the stitch 2. And we're gonna turn on the projection. Whoops, there's the projection. Now, when I turn it on, it dims the light. Let me turn off this other light here so you can see it. Let me get my, where's my little sample? Now we did use this in the tapering activity too. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Now, a lot of times you can turn off the grid so that you can use just the stitch view. So there is a way on your screen to turn off the grid, and I'll turn that on until we get to it. Okay, now there's no grid. Now you should be able to see that beam of light right there that's going right down the middle of that stitch. The reason it's right down the middle of the stitch is because I calibrated my projection. Okay, now let's go over to the screen and we'll look at it in settings and see just how to calibrate it. All right. Have you done this yet, Karen? I
did.
Oh, good.
I got the, about a week or so ago, and mine was off. So that was great.
I noticed that after the update, a lot of ours were off, including mine. So it must be when they put the update in, it threw all the settings off and you had to go back and recalibrate it. So to calibrate your screen, you're going to go up into settings. You're going to go into camera and projection. And then you are going to select calibrate. Now this is where I was saying too, that the presser foot recognition should be checked. If you see the presser feet that you're using. So if you go into calibrate, you take off anything that's covering the throw plate. A lot of times I might even take off the foot. And then what I do is I touch the calibrate right here. Holy moly. Now look what it did. That is because it can't see what's on the throat plate because I covered it up. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. So now we calibrate it again, and now, see, now it'll work. So that's the importance of making sure there's nothing covering the stitch plate.
Oh, okay.
You will, let me see if I can move this up. higher. There we go. See all these different points? You're
Mhm.
going to go to your machine and line these up so it matches whatever's on the screen. Now, let me see if I can. It's not, so I gotta turn the grid back on because it's not showing. So you have to turn the grid on and then it'll show these green lines on your throat plate and you'll line them up. And then when you're all done, you hit OK. I'm not gonna mess with it because it's right. If I mess with it, then I'll mess it up, I'm sure. All right, now the projector, to calibrate the projector, what you're going to do is you're going to put a piece of adhesive paper or let me see if this will work. Put a piece of Kimberbell tape right there. Oops. So by putting a piece of tape, then I can put a little hole in that, and that should be that center design. Now, what am I referencing? I'm referencing on the screen to calibrate. Now, if you need a refresher on this at any time, Cindy made a video and put it in the guide #1 on the Facebook page. And she goes over how to do the calibration thoroughly. But I just highlight it typically in the lessons because if it's not calibrated, I like to calibrate it individually. So each person can calibrate their own. I don't like to calibrate my machine if it's not necessary. So it won't make it any, I don't think it'll make it any difference, rather. As you can see, those stitches were lined up very nicely though. That's the way yours should be too, Karen, if you calibrated it.
Right.
And then hit OK. And we're good to go. So that's basically the calibration. And I did put a link on your handout for the Facebook video. So if you need to access that again, it's right there at the end of the handout. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, projection and sewing. This is the sample that I referenced. This is the first sample that we have. The 6x6 red cotton square with tearaway. I wanted to mention though, the reason that my stitch looks so bold is I have 30 weight cotton. Now, we're having a hard time getting these big spools of 30 weight cotton from Sulky. This is, oh, this isn't even Sulky, is it? No, yes, Sulky 30 weight cotton. But I use this 30 weight cotton for lace. And when we do the endless lace class, or the endless hoop class, we'll do some cotton lace and put it on a towel. So you might want to check with your dealer. I was looking for another spool of Sulky. It looks like a Coates and Clark spool. That just doesn't have as much as this large spool does. But we order through Checkers and we can't get these big ones at the moment. So we are using the smaller ones, which one lace strip uses up quite a bit of it because you put it in the bobbin too. Have you used any of the 30 weight thread?
No,
Oh, it really, there is a lace design and embroidery that's on our machine that stitches out beautifully. Wait till you see it. It's really, really nice. I was so pleased. And then there's many that are already on the MySonet library too. So with the projection in sewing, there are two ways to turn it on. You can turn it on with the icon here on your screen, and you can also turn it on with the button right here, right there. And the camera is right here. I can't see that just yet. Right here, the projection, right there. Okay, so it's beaming the light right down there, which is, see it right there. Okay, now, when you select the projection, let me get this set up so that you can get a better picture of it. It's too close, I'll minimize it, let it, there we go. Focus, and then when I tap this, then it opens up the window. And you'll notice that the LED light or the work light goes down to a lower level. So that makes it easier for you to see. That was just with I think probably the second update that happened. But this screen here, the projection options, the first one is brightness. This is not a lot of brightness, medium, and then the largest amount of brightness possible. The background color is no color, or if you want, you can open up your color wheel and you can change the color specifically with this color wheel and have the tint on the left side and the shade on the right side. So you could pick your colors and add white or add black. That's how that works. I typically just use the quick color, and many times I'll use the green in the demonstration, because when you look, I don't know if you can see that or not, but that is a bright, bright, bright green. You can mainly see the reflection. It's showing up as white. Can you see that, Karen?
Yeah, I can see what you're saying where it's white on the screen, but I can see green through the background there.
So if I change it, let's try what blue looks like. So there's the blue. And again, if you do this activity on your machine, then you'll see the blue square, or this is actually a rectangle. So what I do is I go with no color. So I go back to black, no color. There you go. Because it's a little, yes, maybe for some it helps, but I prefer to have no color. Each of us, I guess, a little different. Now, going on to your stitch preview, I have the stitch preview in white. And you can go in on your activity sheet and play around with that too. And you tap the color wheel. And let me go over here and show you what I'm talking about, so it makes sense. So again, I can choose a quick color right here, and I can choose red. And then that is really a conflict when you look at your screen, because it's not showing up very well at all, but what you see is the red beam of light. So that's one of the reasons I like to use white. Because now you can see the stitch preview and the red beam of light. Now, yes, you can change that beam of light, but this is typically what I use, so I call it essentially my default. So you two can pick what you would like, what makes it the easiest for you to see. Okay, do you have any preset settings on yours, Karen, that you like to work with?
I haven't had it long enough to have any.
Okay. Well, there's a goal. There's something you can play around with your projection and then set it so you typically can find what you're most comfortable with. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Alrighty. Next up, we're going to go to the stitch guide. Now, a lot of times all of this gets in the way. So what I like to do is I like to close some of these by just tapping on the arrow. And when the arrow is down, it expands the screen. When you tap it, it does not. It goes to the right, and that means the screen is not open. Okay, now your stitch guide, I have red. I typically, as I just said, like red, but you can also change it. So you can change it any color you see here. I guess the idea is if you wanted to use a thread color to see how it would stitch out on your fabric, you could do that. But I just use the beam of light as red, and I'm happiest with that. Okay, I'll hit okay. Now the length of this beam is set at 100 millimeters. And what's happening here? I gotta change it back. I tapped no color by accident. So there was no beam of light. So now I'm back to red. So I have 100 millimeter length, and then I'll show you what it looks like in a minute. And then the width is at 3. Now I like to bump that up to 8. Although that really gives you, let me see if I can get you closer so you can see. Can you see that? It really, yeah.
Yeah.
So now you can really see that light right down the middle of that stitch. Now you can move that beam of light vertically, or you can move it horizontally too. You can also change the angle. So if I tap 45 degrees to the right, you can see that that beam of light went 45 degrees to the right. So you can play with your projection. You actually have 2 stitch guides to work with. So you could turn one off and just use the one, or you can use both of them together. So I'm going to go back to 0, and if I tap the center, this little calculator comes up. So I'll show you what I'm talking about. And that's pretty close. So there's the calculator, and I just tap it at 0. And now that beam of light is going to go back so it's straight down the middle. And this is what I was referencing for the vertical position and the horizontal position, and then the angle. So you can play around with that. The best way to learn this is to play with it. And your activity says to select stitch number 3.4.15. So we're going to go in here. And it's 3.4.15, which is the cross stitch design. And to project it on your fabric. Now, it does, the reason I have this red fabric is so you can see what it looks like on red fabric. You would think that it would disappear, but it does not. Look at how bright that red line is, that projection.
Yeah.
Isn't that? I was surprised. But that's why I put the red fabric in the sample. And see, then see how, can you see the difference?
Yes.
That and that. Now I have red thread in my machine. I'm not going to stitch that out. But what you would do for your activity is you would put on foot number 8. And foot number 8 is what we call the maxi stitch foot. It looks like this. And it walks back and forth when it's stitching. And you'll notice that there's no dual feed because it's straight across the back. And also on the back side, there's that tunnel that rides over the thicker threads. So that works really well. So if you try to do this stitch with a 0A, it would sew out, but it may not be as great as you would like it to look. So that's why I always try to follow the directions and put on the correct foot, especially when you're working with these maxi stitches. And that's what that is. That's a maxi stitch. Are you new to the Pfaff brand, Karen?
Well, I had a 7570 for 25 years, and it finally went kaput about 5 years ago, and I actually got a different brand.
Uh-huh.
But then when I saw this one, it was really calling my name, and I had to get it again. So, but I don't have anything left from my old one. I gave it to a friend, and because the machine wasn't working, but she had one also. So it were parts for her.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because it's hard to get anything for the machines. I mean, it is possible. There's somebody in Alabama that has boards, but it's really tough. The maxi stitches were on the 1475, I believe, the first one, just not very many. And then they added more for the 7550 and then the 7570. So the maxi stitches are unique, or were unique to this brand, and now other, like Viking calls them Omni stitches or Omni Motion. So there are some other brands that have them, but that's basically the skinny on maxi stitches. All right, now it says you can also change the color of the stitch preview and play around with it. And so basically what I did is I stitched out the 2 samples that are part of the directions for this lesson. All right. Now, when we get into, let's see, grid quilting, see how you can just line that up with that and then line that up with that stitch. When we get into grid quilting, we're going to use the other plate. So, all right, let me snip that thread. It just kept growing and growing. There we go. Okay. Now, let's go back to the last page. Questions?
No, my dog's just coughing.
Oh,
My husband's supposed to be watching her, but he's outside.
how old is your doggie?
She's 14.
Yeah, we had a little Bichon, and we lost him in October. He was 16.
Yeah.
He was always in either with me or my husband, mainly my husband. So we're not going to get any more dogs, although I do miss having a dog around. We've had a dog for as long as I can remember. So,
This is my daughter's dog, and we dog sit on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So
so that's not your dog then?
no, not even mine.
Oh, okay. All righty. So now let's go back to projection. And we can close this stitch preview. And let's open up the grid. Now the grid information, let me just show you what I have here. If you take a look at my grid that I've done, I have a diagonal grid right there. And then my first practice, this was kind of fun because I played around with the different angles and came up with a second idea, the vertical, horizontal, and the diagonal. Okay, so I wanted to show you a couple different things with the grid. I have to turn it on though. So I turn it on the grid and now everything is highlighted. Now, one of the things, if you are trying to set up your grid size, it's very difficult for a lot of us to understand the concept of millimeters. This would be an example of when I switch back to units and inch units. So if I switch back to my machine and I select inch, it automatically changes back to inches. So I had it set at 10 millimeters, which is 0.39 inches, or a little under half an inch. The grid color is green, and I seem to prefer that green color more than the other colors. But again, you can slide this over. But again, you can change the color of your grid. So you have the color wheel right here. Whoops, there you go. And you can change it just like we've changed the stitches, that sort of thing. So I keep it at green, it works the best. So I'll highlight that to green. And what I mean is it works the best on the screen when I'm doing the lessons. And you'll see what I mean when I bring it over. See how bright that is? So when I use that lime green, you can really see it. Everything is so much crisper now. I had my cataract surgery on Monday. I couldn't believe how much better I can see. I actually threaded a needle without glasses. I was like, whoa.
Fantastic.
Have you had that surgery?
Yes, I had to have it about a year and a half ago.
Did you notice any difference right away?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I was just so excited. Anyhow, this grid looks much crisper to me right now. So when I change the grid, I can change this to 0.5 using the calculator. Whoops, I need a point. So I'm changing it to 0.8. All righty, cancel. Wouldn't let me change it there. Now that's 0.51. So you can see the size of it. That's a ½ an inch grid.
Okay.
Okay. Now let's see if I can change it to an inch. Okay, there's an inch. And I'll show you what I'm talking about on the screen. See? Right here. Doesn't go to 1. I typed in 1.0, it goes to 0.98. And then I can change the position and I can change the angle. And you can set it quickly to 45 with this little icon right here. So let's go back over to that 1-inch grid. The reason I left that stitch on is because when you go to a straight stitch, you lose it with the beam of light. So if I switch to a straight stitch, see, it's in there, but it's hard to see. Now, if you wanted to stitch that, you'll notice that there's nothing behind the foot, that it's all in front of the foot. And I'm going to lower the presser foot and I'm going to start sewing. I gotta put the IDT in, that's what it was telling me, I had to engage the IDT. Whoa, let me see if I can go slower. And now what I'm doing is I'm just sewing that straight line. And then I'm going to cut it. Okay. Now, to continue what you do, and this is the activity that you're going to be doing, that is the first part of your lesson. You make a quilt sandwich and then attach foot 0A and then set it to the width of your line at 8. And you can draw a line from corner to corner like you see here with your friction marker. But what I'm doing is I'm just showing you how to apply using the grid. So now, since I stitched here, I have to move this fabric so it lines up with one of the grid lines, like that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, and then I start sewing that again. This is how you do parallel thread quilting. I don't have to pay attention here. I want it to be straight. And then cut it. And then you would continue doing that. And with the IDT, you know you can turn your fabric and sew this way, and you won't get that rippling effect like you do when you have, you know, when you're quilting. If you go down one side, then you turn it around and go back the other with other machines, it gives a rippling effect. With the IDT, that eliminates that. So you could continue going that way, or you can turn it this way. You see how I turn that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so now what I can do is now I can do, instead of just plain straight line quilting, I can do a box grid of 1-inch squares. And this is really, really nice. So let me see if I can do this straight and sew at the same time. Now, the one thing is you got to try and keep it straight, and so that when it runs into the next green line, horizontal line, that is straight. And I can do the same thing again, or I can turn it this way, and I can line that up with the next grid line, pull it back, and start sewing. Whoops, just trying. Don't look at your needle. Look at this line over here where you're stitching. There you go. Now, to do the diagonal, what is nice is, do you see how that light, that projection light, cuts right through that corner? So I could start here and I could stitch. However, another feature is if I turn on the second light, whoops, and I'll show you in a minute what I'm referring to. I'm going to put a second line going horizontal. Turn it on. And I'm going to collapse a few things here, and then I'll bring the camera over so you can see what I'm talking about. So I turned it on. You see this white light right there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now I'm going to just show you the settings for that second one. So I like to make the guide colors different colors so I can see the differences between the two. You'll notice that the length for this line is 3.94 and you can't go any higher. So you can make the line shorter, but you can't make it any longer. And then you can turn the second line up to number 8, like I did with the first line. And you can see that projection line is already angled at 45 degrees. Right there. Okay. Now I can change again the vertical position or the horizontal position of the light to adjust it to the grid if I choose to. And I can also change the angle. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change this to 90 degrees. And when I change it 90 degrees, I go over here. Right there. So as I bring it over, you see how that is right across like that? Isn't that neat? So what you're going to do is you are going to keep that straight, and that's going to line up each time it passes over this grid line, right? Then you are going to look right here, nowhere else, right there, and you are going to sew your diagonal. Now, don't watch the needle, watch your line. And make sure that that line intersects the point. There we go. Now I'll turn it this way so it intersects the point. Doesn't get any better than that. Isn't that amazing? I get so excited when I teach this. Can you see it, Karen?
Yeah, I can see that. That's really neat. Yeah.
So that is the projection in working with the grid. So consequently, I have quite a few projects here that I've done this with. But this one I did the triple stitch. This one you have to pay attention though, because it goes forward and backwards and forward and backwards. Looks like right here, looks like I went off the line a wee bit. So now another very, very cool feature is doing binding. So with your binding, you're going to have 2 pieces at a 45-degree angle. And what you're going to do is you are going to have your binding like this, and you're going to turn it like this. Okay. Now, what you're going to do is you are going to change this white line. I don't know if I have that in the directions or not. Let's see. So I'm going to turn off the grid according to the directions. And then I have stitch guide number 1 is going to be white. And I'm over here changing them on my screen. And stitch guide number 2 is lime green. Oops. And the stitch length I have at 100 millimeters or 3.94 inches. And I can change, remember I can change the back to inches and back to millimeters quickly, just by going to the settings. And so now the stitch guide is a length of 100 millimeters and a width of 3. So I can change that and then I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, moving over here. Right there while it focuses. So according to the directions, I have it at 100 millimeters for the length and a width of 3. The horizontal position is now going to be 6 millimeters. So I'm going to tap this and do 6. And the 6.0 is actually a 1/4 of an inch. And then the angle is going to be set at 0 or no angle. Okay, so that's this. So that's the settings for your projection. Now the directions say to attach the 1/4 inch foot. And I'm going to go over here to attach the 1/4 inch foot and show you the angles that I've set up. Okay. Are we still on? Yep.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay. Engage by dual feed. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make sure that I have a 1/4 of an inch seam. And to do that, I don't have a very big tail at the top, but I should have a little wing at the top. And do you see how I lined that up? Can you see that?
Yes.
The green line is the edge of my fabric, and the white line is where I'm going to sew. So I'm going to put my needle down, and I am going to watch the green line, because the green line is exactly a 1/4 inch away. Then I'm going to, right here. And cut. And there I have my binding. How's that for a mitered corner or mitered binding?
That's really nice.
Again, just makes me so excited. Little things. So what I do a lot of times is I'll save all my binding pieces. And I'm sure some of you have binding scraps too, so that you can practice before you do it, because it's nice and easy and simple when it's flat against your machine. But we all know that when we're doing this step right here, it's connected to the quilt right here. So what I have to do is one of these days is do a sample where it's connected so that you all can see how that works much better. Okay, so then you press it flat, just like that. Take my binding sample and nice and flat. And now I would finish folding it like this and press that. And then finish sewing my 1/4 inch seam. So anytime you want to set up a perfect 1/4 inch seam, and I had you attach the 1/4 inch foot just so you could see how it works, but you don't really need to. You can leave the 0A foot on, because what you're doing is you're not using the foot anymore as a guide. You're using the projector as your guide. Awesome. Huh. Are you excited?
Yeah, I'm anxious to do some of these things.
Yeah. So when you get a chance, and the other ladies, when you get a chance, just pause the pause the video while you're reading the directions, get everything set up, and then you could turn the video back on and watch how I demonstrated it. And that this is basically how I do the rest of the lessons. There will be times when I don't have time to do it all. Today I had plenty of extra time, I guess not as many questions as I typically have. And I was able to do it in under 2 hours. But I think you have enough to get started. And I am going to go back into the guides on the Facebook page and change this to introduction as opposed to part 1. So I usually do this when when the customer picks up their machine, we do these first 4 pages to get them started, other than just threading and winding a bobbin. So,
Great.
Do you have any questions, Karen?
Not till I try some of these.
All right.
I do want to know, the pin that you're using on your machine, is that a regular computer rubber tipped pin?
Yes.
Or is, oh, it is, okay.
Yeah, we sell them as, well, we give them away as scrap, and so we don't sell them, what am I saying? And we give them away, and they have that rubber tip on it. And the reason is because my fingertips are not very sensitive to what this machine needs. When we were in Arizona, they were so dry, we were putting lotion on our fingertips, because you have to have electrical impulses in your fingertips. And if you've had carpal tunnel, you don't have the electric impulses, I guess, that you typically do without someone who's had carpal tunnel surgery. So, that's why I use them. But you could probably purchase one online. They have a number of them with that rubber tip.
Yeah. Okay. I will do that.
Any other questions?
Not yet. Like I say, when I try some of these, I will probably have some questions. It was very interesting to get to watch this and see done. So.
All righty. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing my screen. We'll go back to this. And the next session, which is at 5 o'clock, and you're joining us as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that again will be, I'll show you, this is a page 1. And so let's do that. See how we got stitching and with the practice samples. This one, you can again just watch. You do not have to try and keep up with me. You can just watch, and then you go back and do it at your own pace.
Right. Okay, great.
So then we'll see you at 5 o'clock.
Okay, great. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.